Hey everybody, how's it going today? Superfiend here, and I've put together this Malus Darkblade Mortal Empires guide on Legendary difficulty for Warhammer 2. Now, this is a relatively new lord, and I have played through the beginning 20 or 30 turns of this campaign many times in putting this guide together. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think you can make a recipe guidebook for this campaign. Every single playthrough I did was different, even if I did some of the same steps. So this is a campaign where you're going to have to make adjustments, evaluate situations on the fly, and react accordingly. Very quickly here, the suitable regions are jungle and mountain. You got the demonic possession mechanic, which is either going to give you really big construction cost reduction or make it so that none of your armies are replenishing, which is a challenging aspect to manage. We have a military alliance with Nagaron, backed up by Hagreef, and we get an income bonus to some of the mines and buildings here. We have recruitment and upkeep cost reduction for Cold One units. The Bloodrack Medusa that you start with is a very good anti-infantry unit. She can withstand blobs of infantry, and she can also plow through them and move where you need her on the battle line. The Cold One Knights are a useful cavalry unit. They give you some killing power, and you're not paying a whole lot for them. The Scourge Runner Chariot is essentially vital to winning the very first battle down in Blood Isles, which is what we're going to do. In this campaign, we're going to keep Hagreef. We're not going to be able to populate the whole province because, as I said, this campaign is highly variable, and you just have to make lemons or lemonade out of lemons with the Malus campaign. So let's jump in. I'll show you how I got along. All right, to kick this campaign off, the first thing we're going to do is pick a technology because that's a simple, easy choice. And we're going to make sure over in the Black Flood that we are requesting additional slaves. Any battles that we win where we take slaves, we want to make sure that we're getting them into a province to enact our rights. And then let's talk for a moment here about Hagreef. Hagreef starts off with a town center that is level 2, and there's 2 buildings in the settlement. One of them allows you to recruit shades, and we don't really need that for our playthrough here. Shades are a little bit of an expensive upkeep unit. And I'm very accustomed and used to getting the first like 30 to 50 turns of my campaigns done on Legendary with essentially basic troops or whatever special units you start with. So we're going to be getting rid of the Shade building. The other building provides 60% upkeep reduction to armies within Hagreef. Now this is very important because Pardek here, while he's in Hagreef, you don't pay a whole lot of money for upkeep on him. So if you move him out of the settlement to explore runes, and we will be doing that, for a turn or two until you either move them back or settle and colonize those runes, you're going to pay extra upkeep. So you want to keep an eye on that. Now, directly over to our west along this road here is the Temple of Cain. That's a minor settlement. Now, there's another minor settlement down to our southwest along this road. Now, you can choose to colonize whichever one of those you want. I recommend not trying to colonize all of Hagreef unless things are going really well for you, because that can steamroll out of control with beastmen and wars declared by other dark elves against Malekith, your military ally. You're going to get dragged into those wars. So there's 2 minor settlements that you can choose to colonize. Now, the thing you need to know is that Malekith, on about turn 3, he's going to force march along this road. He won't settle the Temple of Cain because he's force marched, but if you don't settle it before he does, he will settle the Temple of Cain. And then you will never be able to complete this province, your starting province, without going to war with Malekith or without him getting pummeled by the other Dark Elf factions. So for this playthrough, we're going to be going westward towards the Temple of Cain, and we're going to get that before Malekith does. The other thing you want to be careful here is with Pardek, when you colonize it, because you're going to colonize it early before Malekith does, you're not going to be replenishing because we're still using Malus's demonic possession to win battles against the Lizardmen. So for a few turns, Pardek is going to be very weak, and you're not really going to be able to defend your territory. And so what we're going to do initially here until we're ready to colonize is we're going to leave Pardek in Hagreef. He gets a little bit of extra public order for that. And then when we move him westward, the public order won't be quite as bad. And when we demolish the Shade building, we want to build a public order building because we want to stave that rebellion off for as long as possible until Pardek is at least replenishing. So we've positioned Pardek into Hagreef to help with public order. And now in order to win this fight, we're going to need to throw everything we have down here at it. So we're going to go ahead and blockade with our Black Arc. We're going to encircle with Malus Darkblade. And then we're going to embed our hero into Malus's army. Now, you're going to notice in a moment here that the auto-resolve is in our favor, and if you're not confident in your ability to win this battle, you can auto-resolve it, and I think you lose maybe a unit or 2 of infantry. It's not that bad. You can recover from that. You're going to see after the battle's done here that that's essentially what happens. The first thing I do here to set this battle up is create 5 hotkeys or groups on key units that we're going to be using throughout the battle. And what that does is it allows me to double tap any of those keys to jump over and see what's going on with that unit right then and there. It's an easy way to jump around the battlefield. Now we're going to go ahead and deploy our army over by our reinforcements, and let's talk strategy for just a brief moment. So as I said, our reinforcements are down behind us here, so we're deploying over near them. When your admiral comes onto the field, you can send him up either the left or the right flank, but keep him in the backfield near the dark shards. He's got a crossbow, and the dark shards plus the admiral focus firing on Kroxigors or the large feral Bastillodon. They can bring those units down pretty quick. The AI likes to bring their cavalry around either flank. You don't really know which way they're going to go, so we've positioned our anti-large cavalry in our backfield where they can easily come out left or right to counter the AI's cavalry. Malus, you kind of want out in front. You do want your hero near Malus. He does provide a bonus to him if they're within range of each other. And then the Medusa is pretty strong. You can kind of position it anywhere you want on either side of your flank and let the Medusa go ahead and absorb lots of the AI infantry if you can. Ideally, you'd like to get the Kroxigors or anything big to go onto Malus, because if he starts to lose health, you can transform and get your health pulled back up. And then your Dark Shards, along with your Admiral, can focus fire whatever Malus is fighting. As far as your Black Arc bombardments go, you want to reserve those not for the large clumps around Malus or the Medusa. You want to reserve those for any of your basic infantry that are getting overwhelmed by lizards. The Lizardmen Tier 1 infantry, they're going to chew through your spears and your bleak swords. Any one of these units that is fighting too many Lizardmen, that's where you want to drop your bombardments, because you want to give these units every advantage you can to stand toe-to-toe. Now, the Corsairs that are going to come on with the Black Arc, I send them on the flanks. Corsairs are pretty strong. They got a Sea Dragon cloak, and it provides some sort of resistance to, I don't know, ward save or physical resist, whatever it is. But the Corsairs can stand toe-to-toe with the Lizardmen infantry quite well. The Chariot is the only thing that we leave up front by the Lizardmen starting position. And what you're going to do with that Chariot, you can go either way. I have had success either way. Is you're going to kind of swing around this way and keep moving it through the backfield, or you're going to swing around this way, and move it through here. If the Chariot gets caught by anything, don't worry. It's very durable. The only way it's going to get destroyed is if it gets caught and you don't keep it moving. So you do want to be able to periodically double tap 3 or whatever hotkey is convenient for you, jump over to the Chariot, see exactly what it's doing, and then double tap 1, 2, 4, or 5 to get around to your other units. And so with that said, let's see the battle. Okay, so the battle is started, and we're going to go ahead now and move our Chariot right up there to the Lizardmen lines, and we're going to position our reinforcements. The Admiral's going to go in and kind of hang in the backfield by the Dark Shards, and then the Corsairs go on to either flank. Chariot's getting close to the Lizards. We can see that the Kroxigors are going that way, possibly the Feral Bastillodon. If we can get all those big units to go, that would be lovely. That's about the best possible outcome you could hope for there. And then we've also got a couple units of Lizard infantry that are chasing the Chariot. You can see now, though, that the Kroxigors, you can see it more clearly as the camera turns here, that the Kroxigors are no longer after the Chariot. They've kind of decided they're going to head back over towards our battle line. And we can see that a lot of the Lizard infantry are now stacked heavily on our left flank. So we're going to bring the Medusa over there. We flatten out our Dread Spears to intercept the Krox, but we're also going to bring Malus back over and hope that Malus can get to the Kroxigors before the Kroxigors get to the Dread Spears. If we can do that, then it's going to work out perfectly for us, because we can take all of our missile units and focus fire on the Krox. So we're going to give that order right there. And then Malus is heading over, and the Kroxigors do turn to attack Malus. Perfect for us. On the left flank there, we've got the Medusa is charging in to a couple units of infantry. It looks like it's about to tie up 3 units of infantry. That's pretty good. Feral Bastillodon, though, is skipping past everything and now heading back over towards Malus, or possibly our hero and Bleak Swords. Chariot in the back is about half health. It's not doing so good, but it's only being chased by Lizard infantry now, and it's more than durable enough to withstand that. We got Corsairs on the flank tying up, hopefully 2 units of Lizards. And then pretty soon here, when the Krox are gone, we're going to go ahead and focus fire all of those missiles onto the Bastillodon. We've got our anti-large cavalry are fighting the Feral Cold Ones. They're going to break and chase them straight off the field. And we've got a unit of Dread Spears here that is being pummeled by 3 units of Lizard infantry. So we're going to put the Black Arc bombardments there. help get that Dreadspear unit a little advantage in combat. We're going to go ahead now and give some attack orders onto the Bastillodon. We want to make sure that our hero and Bleak Swords are just on that Bastillodon. The missile units are now shooting it. You can see the Bastillodon morale is going down. We send the Medusa back off over to help that unit of Dreadspears, and then we send Malus over to help the other unit of Dreadspears. And once Malus is over there, if his health gets a little bit low, we can transform him, do his little AoE around himself to give a lot of melee boost or, hurt that lizard unit. The Corsairs are still holding up okay on that flank, and the Bastillodon is broken, but we do want to kill it. We don't want it to regroup and come back into the fight. And in a minute here, we're going to take some of our faster units and pursue some of the Lizardmen fleeing units off the field. So I think right there, I just gave an attack order for our cavalry to chase that fleeing unit of lizards off the field. The chariot is only kiting around a single unit now, so we're going to bring it over and get a nice rear charge where we dropped those bombardments earlier. That's going to make sure that those units break, or hopefully break, and we get them off the field. The Medusa's helping the Corsairs on the left flank, and then we're going to drop the next set of bombardments where the Corsairs are on the right flank. Here comes the chariot. It's clear. We see a nice prime opportunity for a rear charge on a lizard unit that's already shaken, so we're going to go ahead and charge in there, transforming with Malus, and then we're going to use his explosion to cause damage in there. Now, the Kroxigor Ancient and some other lizard infantry are getting into our Dark Shards and our Admirals. So we're going to kind of position them a little bit further back, get the chariot out, get the Medusa over where Malus is. The Coldwind Cavalry that we have chased that feral unit or whatever they were chasing off the field, so they can come back into the fight and assist. And we have a problem down at the bottom of the screen. The Kroxigor Ancient is pummeling the bejesus out of our hero. So what we're going to do is we're going to charge into melee with a unit of Dark Shards and give our hero the opportunity to escape. Now, the Kroxigor Ancients in general are problematic for your heroes starting off. What really works well is to focus fire with all your missile units, including the Medusa if she's not tied up in infantry, because the Medusa tends to knock the Kroxigor Ancients on their butt, and it allows your missile units to do even more damage. Our bombardments are coming back in, and we're going to go ahead and leech some life with Malus so he can be full health, hopefully, on the campaign map. And it does look like the lizard morale is starting to break. We've won the battle, and you're going to see here on the victory screen that essentially all of our infantry have been annihilated or eliminated. We're not going to really be able to use these units, especially without replenishment due to Malus's special mechanics. We're going to go ahead and sack the settlement. That gives us 1,800. That's a pretty good chunk of change and also some replenishment. And then we're going to move in and we're going to occupy so we can get this dilemma. Now, we're going to keep Hagrief, so we're not going to sell it back to Nagaron and take the 20,000 and the growth. We're going to exile this filth. We keep Hagrief, and we get a really nice public order bonus. So selecting Malus, we're going to go ahead and right-click on our Black Arc, and we're going to transfer everything into the Black Arc. That saves us a lot of money in upkeep because the Black Arc gets 50% upkeep reduction, I believe it is. We will merge our Corsair units together, and we're going to disband the Dreadspears that we have. I don't want to pay full upkeep or even 50% upkeep for extremely weak units that are going to take a long time to replenish, especially with Malus's campaign mechanic. And then also, it's worth considering that between Malus and the Admiral, we can recruit 5 new Dreadspear units, and that's exactly what I've done. Right here, I was evaluating whether it's worth the money to repair the settlement, and I decided that in the end, it's really not worth it. I'd rather hold on to it. And we've got Pardek there, assisting with public order and Hagrief. Now, there is one thing I did intend to do, but forgot to do on turn 1. It's not really that consequential. Actually, 2 things now I think about it. The first is I'm not planning on recruiting any shades. So if we demolish this building, we can get 1,500 back for our treasury, which I think is worthwhile. The other thing I forget to do, but eventually I go back in and I do it, is to turn on increased or extra slaves for our new settlement down here. Now, this is where we got to walk a bit of a tightrope and find a nice balance here. Initially, I had thought I was going to recruit more Dreadspears with Malus Darkblade, so I didn't move our units into full speed ahead or anything like that. But if our army is too strong, then the lizards aren't going to come out and attack us in an open field battle. Instead, they'll sit in their capital and they'll just build up a giant full stack, and it's going to be a real nightmare to get rid of that thing. So once I decided that the army that I had was strong enough to kill the lizards in open field battle and take the settlement, I decided it might be better to put our units into force march or full speed ahead here and get as close as we can to the provincial capital. And you're going to see that that's going to work out very well for us here. Now, with Pardek, I'm deciding that, you know what, I think I'd like to go over to Temple of Cain and search the runes there. Because one, you can get good items. Two, it'll give you 1,000, which will offset the expense of him being outside of Hag Grief for a turn. Because remember, you get 60% upkeep reduction while he's in Hag Grief. That's very nice for Pardek. We're going to jump back over to Pardek and come out of our forced march stance and go ahead and search the runes at Temple of Cain. Now, of all the puzzles I get what I think is my second least favorite, and it's Lizardman Sudoku. And the reason is because even though I can do Sudoku, with these ones, I always feel like there's not enough information, and very often I have to guess. And the camera even did a little jump there because I stared at this for like 3 minutes, and then I still guessed. I did happen to get it right, so that's great. We get 1,000 for our treasury, and that's going to be helpful because right now Pardek is no longer in our territory up here. He's not getting that upkeep reduction. And I go ahead, I put the public order building in, and then I think, nah, maybe growth. And then I think, no, we're going to colonize Temple of Cain. Pardek's going to take lots of casualties, and we don't want to fight a rebellion when he's got lots of casualties. So I am going to go ahead and put the public order building back in here. And the reason for that is I just want to stave off that rebellion for as long as possible. Coming back over here to the Lizardman territory, this works out incredibly well. We come out of full speed ahead with Malus. We move towards the Lizardman settlement, and we're going to transfer everything into his army. Now, because it's coming out of the Black Ark, where we have that 50% upkeep reduction, guess what? We're going to go a little bit negative with our upkeep for a couple turns here, I believe. It's not that big of a deal. If you could plan it better and have exactly the right number of units here, you could probably save being negative. But we are able to come onto the land here with Malus, go into an ambush stance with 80% chance of success. And we're getting replenishment from the Black Ark because we're not in our territory. So this works out really well. The lizards happen to not come out and attack us. Maybe they haven't recruited any units yet, or maybe they've only got a lord and like 2 or 3 units, not enough to move out. But no big deal. They didn't discover our ambush, so that leads me to believe that we can stay in that ambush stance a little bit longer. And then we're finally going to settle Temple of Cain. This costs us 2,000. Pardek's army is going to take a lot of casualties. And again, we want to get growth and public order buildings up there in the Black Flood as much as possible. And then I turn on extra slaves in our territory down here in the Isles. I think it's the Dragon Isles, but don't quote me on that. And so we go through another turn here. We get a little bit of movement out of Malekith, and I can't remember what that was. It doesn't matter. But we get our ambush against the lizards. And you can see here, even though they got, a moderately small army, the auto-resolve is like pretty even. And I don't feel comfortable auto-resolving this. One, because our hero is weakened. I don't want him to die. And two, because I just don't want to be so demolished by auto-resolve that we can't push up and attack the settlement. For this battle, we have our nice long line of spears over here in case any of the lizard infantry start to come off this way. We have deployed our cavalry at the tail end of their column here, and the idea is to charge in and get these skink cohorts with javelins, get them moving this way, or if we can, tie them up right here, get a nice initial charge, do lots of damage, and then we'd want to pull our cavalry back this way, hopefully drawing some of the lizardman infantry that way as well. We have our weakened unit of bleak swords here. If possible, we'd like this unit to get wiped out or take lots of casualties. And the idea is after we kind of bounce out this way with the cavalry, any of their infantry that come this way, we can kind of come up and we can bait them with our bleak swords. And if we get a really nice bait right here, maybe that's where we drop our bombardments. As far as our spearmen overall, though, we just kind of want to hang back, absorb the charges, and give the lizardman infantry time to either chase the cav, chase the bleak swords, or fall in over here where we've positioned Malus along with the Corsairs. Now, the idea with Malus is of course, we're going to charge in, try to tie everything up. We're going to charge in with the Corsairs Again, this is an expensive upkeep unit. If we can distribute casualties onto it and then just disband it and leave everything else here nice and strong for the ensuing siege battle that's going to happen after this ambush, that would be beneficial. We have the Medusa is right here, in addition to our Dark Shards and our Chariot. Now, oftentimes, starting off with Malus, it's a good idea to take your Chariot and just kite things around. But in this case, what we're going to do right here is we've got 4 missile units. The Medusa, as I said in the last battle, is very good at knocking the Kroxigor Ancients on their butt. So right when this battle starts, all 4 of these units here are going to be focus firing on this Kroxigor Ancient, and we're going to get him down. Now, things don't go exactly according to plan. You'll see this battle essentially unfolds in 3 stages. The first stage is a nice big combat over here, getting some stuff going on over here with the cavalry and the bleak swords. In the next stage of the battle, we are going to have some lizard infantry over here at the back end of our line. We're going to have positioned our Dark Shards right here where they can fire down the flank, and then some of our spears are going to be up here. There's going to be fleeing lizardmen units all in this area here, with a few of them kind of heading back this way to come up to our spears that we move up. All throughout this battle, we need to be careful of our hero here. His health is low. We want to keep him close to Malus, but we don't want him to get wounded and die. And then the third stage of the battle is kind of like mopping up some stuff over here. And then we want to, because the lizards after this battle can retreat back into their settlement via forced march, we want to wipe out as much as we can. But Malus's health, whether he's transformed or not, whatever his health is at the end of the battle is what it's going to be on the campaign map, and thus that's what it's going to be in the ensuing battle when we do the siege. So we really don't want Malus to get like way down to low health. Ideally, we'd like to leave this battle with like 50% health, or even full health would be ideal. As we start the battle here, we open up by focus firing straight into the Kroxigor Ancient. The Medusa is going to knock him on the ground a couple times and slow his ability to get into combat with us. He'll take a lot of damage. Our cavalry go right after their missile units and completely bypass all the infantry. And we do get embroiled with the missile units back there, the Skink cohort with javelins. And the cavalry does pull 2 of the other lizardmen infantry off in that direction. Now, as the lizardmen infantry get close to the cavalry, we do want to pull out. Our cavalry does take quite a bit of damage in this fight. And then down over here where the Kroxigor Ancient is fleeing, he's soon going to die. And then we're going to drop our bombardments on this giant clump of lizardmen that is around Malus and our Corsairs. Now, the reason we're charging in with the Corsairs is because, 1, they stand up better against the lizardmen infantry. 2, they are expensive upkeep, so if we can give them lots of casualties, then we can just disband them and get rid of an expensive upkeep unit and still be just as effective at taking what's left of the lizardman territory after this fight is over. Stage 2 here is the big lizardman clump is breaking, and we're going to pursue them with the Chariot. We've positioned our Dark Shards where they can fire into the flank of that other lizardman unit that's engaged solo there with some dread spears, and then we do drop the Black Arc bombardments there, 2 of them, as the lizardmen flee. So unfortunately, those were not very effective. If I had been just a little bit slower with the Black Arc bombardments, or if the lizards had broken a little sooner, I would have dropped the bombardments right here where Malus is now. Stage 3 is we're pursuing that unit that broke off the field. Some of the other units are regrouping, but now our Dark Shards and Medusa are positioned so that we can shoot them as they come back and chase them off. And then we have Malus is over here tying up the remainder of the lizardman infantry. His health's a little bit low. He is transformed, so we pop all of his abilities. We do want to get his health hopefully back up to 100%, but also some of these lizard units are a little bit strong, so we want to pursue them. Now, as we do this, Malus's health is going to slowly decline, and that's a trade-off. And if we let his health get too low, well, then when we come in on the next battle, Malus is going to be weak. Now, we can transform him and get him strong again, but ideally, you'd like to start the battle with Malus relatively strong. So I end the battle a little prematurely with Malus at about 50% health. And I think that's going to leave us in good position back on the campaign map. We're going to go ahead here. We take the slaves. We do get 1,500 for our treasury. Taking the slaves gives us a little bit of replenishment. We still replenish from being in range of the Black Arc, and the lizards do retreat back into their settlement. But that's going to leave us in a really good position to push up an attack on our turn. So it's now the beginning of turn 5, and we have sacked and occupied the initial lizardman settlement. We've defeated them in an ambush battle, and our first technology is done. So we're going to go ahead and go into the next one, founded on tyranny, that gives increased growth. There's a second growth research that we're going to go into after that, because we are trying to grow and populate and occupy 2 different provinces here. We have skill points with Malus. I put the first one in the Route Marcher, and then I do strongly consider Infamous Raider for the sacking bonus, but ultimately I decide against it. And the idea with that is we will be taking Malus out of these islands and moving him eventually back up to Hag Reef, where he's probably going to be helping us defend our territory, at the very least against rebellions, possibly other Dark Elf factions. And that kind of tends to be true. You'll see that in a little bit here. The Temple of Cain is 1 turn away from being upgraded or having the town center built. And then in Temple of Cain, we're going to prioritize growth in income buildings and the walls or garrison building last. Back over here with Malus, we push up to siege Dreadrock, and unfortunately we find that the Kroxigr Ancient has escaped with 3 source infantry and 1 missile unit. So on top of the garrison, there's a small army there, and that's a little hard for us to defeat. So I decide, you know what? It's best here to just build siege towers and let Malus's army replenish within range of the Black Ark. And then there's really not much else we can do right now. Pardek can't replenish yet until we at least take the elixir 1 time with Malus, and I'm not going to do that until after we capture that provincial capital down in the islands. And the reason for that is we want to use Malus's possessed demon form to help us win that battle. I do also, in the midst of this turn here, or coming up pretty soon, I kind of play around with building an extra set of siege towers. I kind of go back and forth on it. Ultimately, I decide to build the extra set of siege towers, and so that really does kind of delay things down here at Dreadrock. I was hoping that after the ambush battle, we just push up and we attack on a single turn, and by turn 6 or so, we would have this settlement and be heading down to the last final settlement, Shattered Stone Isle down there, and then maybe around turn 7, we have the whole province. But it's not working out that way, and so I'm continuously checking the public order in the Dragon Isles, and as long as the rebellion's not about to happen, we're okay to siege a little bit longer. It's a little bit of a hiccup, but it does have another negative consequence here you're going to see pretty soon on the next, I believe it's the next sequence of AI moves. Clark Harond, which is a Dark Elf faction to the south of Hag Reef, where we are right now, they declare war on Malekith, and we have Pardek's army in the Temple of Cain. It's got massive attrition or very low numbers, and it doesn't have walls. It's not going to have walls for a while, and so I don't feel comfortable joining Malekith in a war against Clark Harond. And so when we get that diplomatic dilemma, it's not a true dilemma in the Total War sense of the word dilemma, but when that happens, I have to really evaluate what's best for our campaign. And the Malus campaign, I have found, is highly variable. It's very hard to have a direct recipe of like, do this and this is what's going to happen. So the fact that it was Clark Harond that declared war on Malekith, when we're not quite ready to defend our territory there, it's going to force me to break our military alliance with Malekith. That's very unfortunate. I was hoping that we could keep that and help Malekith defend his territory. So it hasn't happened quite yet. Then it's going to be on the next sequence of AI moves. Another thing I did while I was kind of discussing all that is because we are waiting for the siege equipment to be built here, and I am going to sack that capital to help fill up our treasury a little bit more. On the Black Ark, we built the sacking building. It gives 20% increased income from sacking for armies within range of the Black Ark. That's very nice. You can see our public order is okay there, 68, minus 68, going to go down by 5. So the rebellion's not going to happen. We got plenty of time to finish out the siege. And here I have to weigh, do I think we can defend against Clark Harond? They have probably 5 or 6 settlements, so I don't think we can. I break that military alliance, and that's unfortunate. I wish I didn't have to do that. So our first growth technology founded on tyranny is done, and from there we're going to go into revel and suffering, which is going to give us an additional 15 growth in our provinces. It's very helpful. And our siege equipment is done, so it's time to go ahead and take this city. Now, I did prune the battle out, and right here at the victory screen, we're going to go ahead and sack, and then I believe we move straight into occupying it. I think we have the movement for that. All told, we get about 5,000 from this. That's really good for our treasury. It's going to help us build up over in Hag Reef or the Blood Swamps or whatever that starting province is called. The reason I pruned the battle out is because it was just a really long slog. I pushed the towers up to the walls, and then everything that could basically go through the towers, we just moved it up through the towers onto the walls and just very slowly killed off the lizards, dropped Black Arc bombardments where it made sense, and got the battle done. And so now I'm evaluating, like, where's our public order at? How long before we get the rebellion? Is it worth building up or repairing these settlements? We can see down over here, Temple of Cain, we're ready to build a couple buildings, and we've lost our military alliance with Nagaron or Malekith. So, you know, they may turn on us. These other Dark Elf factions, because we don't have a military ally, they may turn on us. So I'm really trying to figure out, is this the right time to use the elixir for Malus 2 times? And the reason we would use it twice is, well, the first one is going to get us the ability to replenish. So Pardek's army could be made stronger to fend off Hag Grief from rebellions or hostile forces. If we use it a second time, we gain full control of the possession, and that gets us a very handy 50% construction cost reduction, which also affects the repairs. So I did go ahead and use the elixir twice, and now I'm going to go through and do lots of building where it makes sense. I do evaluate whether or not I think it's worth it to upgrade the Black Ark's main building. I decide not to do it, and the reason for that is we're essentially using the Black Arc as support to increase our sacking bonus. If we want to get the next level of the sacking building in the Black Arc, we will need to upgrade the Black Arc. But right now, I'm more concerned with making sure we have enough money to upgrade all of the town centers in our provinces, because as we upgrade those town centers, back in Hag Grief, we can add walls, but I also really want to prioritize growth and income buildings. And the reason I want to prioritize the income buildings, even before the walls in some instances here, is because I want to recruit a larger force in Hag Grief. I want to have a nice, strong force there so that when we move out and settle other runes, it doesn't cost as much. We don't take as much attrition. We can come out of fights with rebellions much stronger. So that's really what we're prioritizing, and that's why I decide not to upgrade the Black Arc building at this time. Now, the other thing we're going to do here is, we move the Black Arc and our hero over to scout Shattered Stone Isle and see what kind of force the lizards are recruiting there. And I think we can get there in 2 turns if we force march. Malus's army is strong and well equipped to win that battle. So I felt it was worthwhile to force march Malus all the way down here to where he is now. And of course, we're doing more upgrades with the town centers in the Dragon Isles there. Now, next turn, if we can, we're going to push up and we're going to go ahead and sack that last Lizardman settlement and then try to occupy it. And you'll see how that kind of plays out here in a moment. Malekith trespassing through our territory makes me a little bit nervous because now our relations with him are declining. And we have some greenskins to our northwest asking us for non-aggression. And we don't want to get involved there because, of course, there's a Skaven legendary lord that's most likely going to wipe them out. We got a really good event there, plus 15% campaign movement range. That's just random chance. And I think without it, we may not have been able to come up and attack this settlement on this turn. We might have been close, but not quite there. And the balance of power is about even. And then when we embed our hero, our master, into Malus's army, that's going to put the balance of power more in our favor. I'm not sure if that's simply because he's there or if it's because I've also been putting points into his yellow line to make him more of a combat hero. Over here, we are still getting, I think, a 20% construction cost reduction, and the buildings that I'm building are not super expensive, so I feel that it's worthwhile to just start building them now, get that growth, get that reliable income per turn so that we can start recruiting more troops and whatnot. The balance of power here is now, a little bit more in our favor. So I feel, what, let's go ahead. We'll auto-resolve this one. We lose the Corsairs. Again, that's an expensive unit, so I don't mind them being gone. And then you can see there the movement that we have remaining is not enough to get in and take the settlement. So we're going to have to wait one more turn. We are replenishing from the Black Arc. We have some skill points we can spend here with Malus and the Master. For the Master this time, though, we pick Stimulate Growth, because now that we are on the verge of getting the whole province, we want to put his next skill points into Stimulate Growth. Any remaining battles we're going to have to fight down here are going to be really easy and primarily rebellions. And so what I'm doing now is I want to bring Malus back up to Hagrief. So I'm looking for a new hero to replace Malus. It's going to take 5 turns for him to become available again. And we're just looking for a lord that has good loyalty and a decent trait. In the end, it's this fire sorceress. We get income from raiding, income from sacking, and she's got 5 to 10 loyalty. It gives us a spellcaster. Spellcasters are handy. I always want to have a wizard or a spellcaster in an army if you can. Just being able to dish out some vortexes, some buffs, some debuffs. They can really swing a battle in your favor or help you minimize casualties, which is important on legendary difficulty. Over here, there's really not much we can do in Temple of Cain. And the next few turns are going to be somewhat uneventful. I do bring Pardik down because I'm thinking I'd like to try to settle Kragroth Deep, the other minor settlement that's part of our province up there. However, Malekith, he ends the military access pact that we have with him right here. And so I'm going to bring Pardik back into the Temple of Cain, and I'm just going to leave him in there until we have the garrison and the walls. Lizards are asking for peace. Of course, we're going to decline that because we're going to annihilate them right now. And now we enter the high-speed chipmunk segment of our guide. One thing to keep in note just happened there is after you capture this whole province and settle one set of runes up in Hagrief, you're going to get the advisor coming in to tell you that you've occupied, razed, or sacked your 4 different settlements. You get 2,000 for that. That's a nice handy boost to your treasury. And we're going to go ahead and start heading back to Dreadrock because the rebellion is going to come soon. I don't know how strong this rebellion is going to come in at, and I do want to auto-resolve it. So with the Sorceress Lord down here, I do believe I recruit a few Dread Spears. Now, the next thing we're going to be keeping an eye on here is, one, as I mentioned, we're going to bring Pardik back over to Temple of Cain. Nagaron is very hostile with us right now. He doesn't like us. He's removed his military access pact. And then I'm also evaluating how much does it cost to build these buildings. Now, on Temple of Cain, we want to go ahead and upgrade the town center as soon as we can. And the reason we want to do that is because we want to be able to get the walls now that we're no longer allied with Malekith and other Dark Elf factions may be declaring war on us. But I am also going to be keeping careful track of how many buildings we can upgrade and when is the best time to use the elixir to get that 50% construction cost reduction. I did go ahead and spend a 2,700 to work on the town center in Temple of Cain because, again, I want the walls. But down over here in Dragon Isles, I don't do a lot of building unless the building is really cheap. If it's more than 1,500, then I'm not going to build it in Dragon Isles until we use the elixir 2 times. And also another thing that I'm going to keep coming back to in Hagrief is, one, not only when can we build the walls, when is that town center and Temple of Cain going to be done, but our population in Hagrief. We've got about 4 turns before we get to population 2, and we can upgrade the provincial capital from 2 to 3, and that's an expensive upgrade. So ideally, we want to build the walls, and we want to do the provincial capital upgrades when we have the elixir bonus. You can see in Dragon Isles there's quite a few buildings that are ready to be built, but they're 1,400, 4,500 for the port. It would be fairly cheap to build either the growth or the income building in the empty slot that we have there. So I may build it this turn or next turn or relatively soon. But again, I'm just keeping an eye on things. And again, there's not a whole lot of action going on right here. One thing to keep in mind with our sorceress is after we clear this initial rebellion, I don't usually game the system like this, but we are going to raid the Dragon Isles to cause more rebellions. And our real goal with that is to acquire slaves. And the reason we want slaves is because the Dark Elf rights, they work off of slaves. And I don't remember the name right now, but the second Dark Elf right that gives you the Arcane Conduit, it's a massive explosion. If you trigger that on a hero or a lord, it will kill everything around it. And so with our position being a little bit tenuous in Hagrief, where we might get a lot of war declarations, we want to make sure that we can call upon that right and get that Dark Conduit if we need it. Okay, now we go ahead, we pick up continuous slave supply, which is going to give us more captives after battle, I believe it is. And that's going to help us to keep our slave population high. Because right now we got 1,100 slaves, but it does decline every turn. And our only consistent source of slaves right now, until we get Hagrief a little bit more strong, or a little bit stronger would be a better way to say it. Our only consistent supply of slaves is the rebellion. And those are happening like every 5 or 6 turns. So they're not quite that frequent. We do have the first 2 rights unlocked. The second right, again, has the Arcane Conduit. We want to kind of keep that in our pocket in case we need it, in case we get a lot of war declarations from strong factions. And then with the sorceress, we're going to go ahead, we're going to kill that rebellion. I was just checking there to see if anybody wanted to trade with us to help our income per turn, but they don't. So we're going to kill this rebellion. We're going to get about 1,800 for this. And then this is going to allow us to disband some of the Dreadspear units. And after we disband some units, we're going to go from 300 income per turn to almost 1,200 income per turn. And what I do with that is we go back to the army, Pardik's army in Temple of Cain, and we're going to recruit a couple Corsairs with handbows. We want to see if there's any good items we could give our sorcerers. We got a scroll of leeching, and you can pick up followers that give you quite a bit of positive public order in this campaign. If you're raiding your own territory, such as we're doing here with the sorcerers, you want to make sure that you don't accidentally pick up a +6 public order follower. We're going to pick up Dreaded Slaver in the blue line with her, because I think that again is for captives after battle and post-battle loot, and that's really what she's doing down here. I don't tend to go blue line in my lords most of the time. I don't really go after Lightning Strike or the upkeep reduction really far down in the blue line. However, in a Dark Elf campaign, that income from sacking that you can get, that I think it's like 20% income from sacking, and how the Dark Elf economy like really revolves around sacking and all the bonuses you get with having nearby Black Arcs. The blue line I tend to go into at least 4 points on a Dark Elf campaign, and that's just to get the sacking bonuses. Over here, it's time to bring Malus back in, and the walls, the first level of walls at Temple of Cain is only 1,500, so I'm going to go ahead and spend that. We've also, since we're now earning about 1,000 per turn, we had some decent income from the rebellion. I feel comfortable going in and building some of the cheaper buildings down here in Dragon Isles, and then I'm going to play it a little bit risky at Hagrief. Now, I want to use the elixir twice and get the 50% upkeep reduction. However, the provincial capital in Hagrief is going to be ready, I think, to upgrade next turn, but the walls now take 2 or 3 turns. And I want to get the 50% construction bonus on the walls and the provincial capital town center. So you can see there, town center is ready to upgrade. The walls got 1 more turn. So I'm going to wait that 1 extra turn to use the elixir twice. Now, just between the town center and the walls, that's like $6,000 or 6,000 gold in upgrades. The elixir is going to cost me 2,000. So when if we need to spend 6,000 without the elixir, and then you use the elixir for 2,000, well, then what you're spending is 5. So you still save 1,000. So it's like, is it worth it? Not really for Black Flood. However, we're also going to be upgrading in the Dragon Isles, and there's that really expensive harbor that's 2,500. There's the town centers. There's other buildings here. And of all the unfortunate luck in all of my rerolls of this campaign, the first 20 to 30 turns to put this guide together, not once did I get a Skaven Undercity. This was the only one I got a Skaven Undercity. And so that thing right there, when I'm trying to do provincial upgrades, is now 2,000 gold to get that removed. And I don't have a whole lot of experience with the Skaven cities, so I kind of let it sit there. In the end, it cost me, I think, 3,000 or maybe over 3,000 gold to remove it. I probably should have removed it right now and then just waited 1 more turn or something to do the elixir. But as it is, I used the elixir twice. We're doing the walls and the town center back in Hagrief. We're going to upgrade the port down here because we're going to get a lot of savings on that. And then we're going to upgrade some of the other buildings that provide income per turn. And the reason for that is we just want to get our income per turn high, because then we can still take advantage of the reduced construction cost, even though our possession is not completely under control. For a little while, you get like an additional 20% construction cost reduction, and then eventually I think it drops to 10%, which is still not bad. I mean, if you're getting 20 or 10% off the construction cost reduction for a building that's 1,500 or less, that's still a couple hundred gold. The 50%, I think, is really important to try to use for the really, really, really expensive upgrades. And so right there, I go ahead and spend 1,000 to upgrade the financial building in Temple of Cain. As there's not a whole lot of military action or other things happening right now, I've pruned out a few more turns, and we skip ahead now to turn 24, where we initially have failed one of Malus's objectives. Now, if you do have time in your campaign to pursue these objectives, I would recommend it. If you get one that's like be at war with Harganeth or Grond Basically, any Dark Elf faction that's not Klar Karan directly to your south, I would consider doing that. You can get pretty good items out of them. And if you're at war with Harganeth or Grond or one of those other smaller factions, that's generally not that problematic. In terms of this particular playthrough, though, I didn't have the time to really go off and pursue any of those. And, we had to break our alliance with Malekith. Now, as I zip around here, and you can kind of see some of the provinces as I click on them, you can see that we've got the walls now in Temple of Cain. We've got the growth building. Some other stuff has been upgraded. And I did go ahead and remove the public order building in Hag Reef to add the garrison building there to improve our garrison. And that's because Harganeth, I think it's Kron Hellborn's faction, she declared war on us somewhere in between the last set of turns and this set of turns here. In the Shattered Isle, we're building up our resource building and other income building. I'm hoping that with resources, we can initiate some trade agreements, but most of the factions are not willing to trade with us yet. Now, as far as overall campaign strategy here, I do have enough slaves to use any of the rights that are available. I did at one point use the first right to get a sorceress that we can kind of use to scout a little bit, see what Harganeth is doing. And in a few more turns, these other two rights here will become available. And depending on what Harganeth does, if Harganeth doesn't send any armies our way, then I might go after the Black Ark so we can increase our sacking bonus. Or if Harganeth does send troops our way, I would go after the Sacrifice to Cain, the second right, to get the Arcane Conduit. From here, I feel like I could complete this campaign, either going to war with Malekith, finishing off Harganeth, all that kind of stuff. I hope you found this guide useful. If you did, let me know with comments or thumbs up, and I look forward to seeing you maybe in some other content on my channel. You have yourself a good afternoon, and take care.